Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Friday, the 7th of March. I'm Derek Clark, as you can see, still in Istanbul, where the sun is shining and the call to prayer has just ended. Right on cue for us starting the show. Joshua Barry joins us. How's it going, Joshua?
Good. Not as nice in Glasgow as it is in Istanbul. Derek, your voice slightly croaky, but how's the head this morning? Feeling? You look pretty fresh. I guess it's a few hours ahead there, is it not?
Yes, 3 hours ahead here. I might look pretty fresh, but I don't feel it, I've got to say. To be fair, ever since I got off the plane the other day there, I've had a bit of a sore throat. I've got a bit of the lurgy going on here, so nothing to do with the copious amounts of beverages that were consumed, and no beverages, of course, consumed at the game last night. No alcohol served. I was lucky to get little cups of water. I've got to be honest, there was two little, almost like cubby holes that were serving over 2,500 fans. You can imagine the queues. So, not the best, but what an away end last night. It was sensational to be a part of, and very much enjoyed what unfolded on the pitch. Rangers were magnificent, Joshua, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Johnny and I obviously spoke about it briefly last night post-match, and a kind of continuation of Rangers being a complete and utter enigma, and then simultaneously being complete and utterly predictable in European football. It suits them. They seem to rise to the occasion. Leon Balogun said after the game on Saturday, after the defeat against Motherwell, he said it might actually be helpful for the group to not play at Ibrox and to be able to play away from home in a different competition. And for whatever reason, this has been a continuous theme of Rangers throughout various managers, various squads, that these nights seem to bring the best out of them. And we'll obviously get into some of the individuals who specifically made that happen, the game plan that worked really well, but it puts them in an incredibly commanding position to make the last eight. Obviously, it's not done, but you've got to say that they've got one foot there and they've got a great opportunity with the game at home. And that's not an easy team to beat at home. I don't know what the stats are. I think they've not lost at home in 18 or 19 games, Derek. And if you remember, that's a stat that is kind of been relatively common of Rangers. Who was the team they beat away from home recently? Was it Betis last season? Betis hadn't lost at home in like a year or something.
I think so, yeah.
And maybe Benfica too. I can't remember. But this is just a constant theme of Rangers from manager to manager. They had a fantastic group stage. They played 4 of the top 8 teams. They probably had the hardest route to make this stage, and this was by no means an easy tie. And they had a little bit of fortune in moments. The chance creation was pretty equal. Jack Butland had a couple of big saves. But you also have those 2 offside goals from Cyril Dessers, where if he is just so marginal, and it was close to being an even more commanding win. So, yeah, you were there, obviously I wasn't there, but there's just been so many of these kind of historic nights, and it feels like a team who are just totally different when they play in this competition. And again, you're starting to think in Europe, who knows where this could go, and they have, I think, every right. I'm sure the players will be focused on that game next week, but they have every right to dream a little bit based on what they've done in the competition so far, because they've played most of the big teams in this competition and shown that they don't really have anything to fear when they're at their best.
Yeah, I think I've seen a stat as well. If they've not lost a home knockout tie in this competition or in Europe, sure. I need to check that and make sure that's a legitimate stat. Well, that is quite incredible, really. Just before I forget, folks, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors, of course. Ranger Review now brought to you by S1 Jobs. It's time to hand in your transfer request and head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV today. With thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh and the surrounding area, you'll find them on S1 Jobs. So start your search today. And remember, just a bit of admin. If you want to get your comments in, you have to be a subscriber to the channel. That is totally free, remember. But if you want to fire a comment into the show, then make sure you hit that subscribe button. Right, there's so much to discuss from the game, of course, Josh. Like you said, the 2 offsides for me, it's huge. Fenerbahce gets such a lift when they realise the goals have been ruled out for offside, but the mentality for Rangers not to let the heads drop from that. You've seen many games now where VAR has a contributing factor on the outcome of matches when a decision may be going against one team, the other team gets a lift and they go on and win the game or get a more positive result. But to then score a third goal, it's quite sensational, really. And what a beautiful goal it was too. Nico Raskin's pass. Forget the Scott Allen pass, the fabled Scott Allen pass of yesteryear. This is the pass we should be waxing lyrical about for years upon years on end, because that was magnificent from Nico Raskin. And then Václav Černý, who was in the mood last night, finishing with aplomb. Thought it was excellent. The second goal, the Černý second goal, one of the goals of the season for me, Joshua. Awareness of Dessers to play it first time, across the goal, pinpoint accuracy, and Černý with the most delicate finishes to knock it home. We've often said on videos about Rangers squandering chances on breakaways and taking the wrong option. They didn't do that last night, did they?
No, I think Dessers and Černý look like a duo who've kind of built up a bit of. They've been playing together for a while now, and they've built up a bit of a relationship, and you could see that. I'm not sure even Černý in the first instance knew that pass was arriving. But what made that move for me, Derek, and we'll have something about actually Černý on the website this morning. We'll have loads of content on the game, specifically looking as well at what Barry Ferguson and his coaching staff and team of analysts did to win this game, because it was a move that I think caught a lot of people off guard. We thought it would still be a back four before the game, but it worked really well. And it was getting Černý in those narrower positions. I think they've also freed him up a little bit from his defensive responsibility. And you saw this at Ibrox at the weekend. Černy's a player who's just played so much football. And there's been so many games this season where you've seen him in the final 10 minutes and just thought he looks absolutely done. Old Trafford away is the game that springs to mind when he just couldn't track back and help on that occasion. But keeping him a little bit higher, as you see for his second goal, Rangers' third goal on the night, gives them a little bit more of a counter-attacking threat, especially when they don't have a ton of pace up top. Also thought, and I tweeted this out, but where the third goal starts was Dujon Sterling winning his... he didn't even win the tackle, but he just got enough on a cross to block it rather than allowing the cross to go in. Just a proper defender's move, but it was the small detail that I think actually St. Maximum's crosses were starting to cause issues, because Fenerbahce had three big attackers in there. They were really loading the box, weren't they? And Rangers had to defend their box really, really well. But Sterling got a all-important touch, catalysed the attack. Nico Raskin plays a fantastic pass through, and Václav Černý finishes it. And Dessers, he kind of just epitomises this team, because I was actually speaking to someone about him this morning. I'm not sure if I've actually lost Eric, so I'm just going to keep speaking until I have. Look at that. You send him on a trip to Turkey and he can't even be bothered to stay for the entirety of the morning briefing. I'll continue. Dessers, I thought, while he epitomises this team and that he looks often a bit more comfortable in European football and domestic football, I think with Dessers we'd maybe have a slightly different conversation if, let's say, hypothetically, he arrived at the club at a similar time to Danilo. Let's say, hypothetically, Danilo had been as physically fit and available, not had the injuries that he has had, and was then available to play more of the games like Motherwell at the weekend when Rangers are facing a team that sit in and play a low block. I think we'd be having a different discussion about Dessers, as I think Derek's coming back.
Yeah, there we go.
I thought I said we've sent you. You're in Turkey, and it's the second day in a row that you've just foregone the basic duties of the morning briefing. But
yes.
I didn't break a beat. Listen, I was just saying that I think with Dessers we'd have a bit of a different conversation if Danilo had been fit since he'd come to the club. I think one of the issues that Rangers have had, and we've discussed this with young players too, because they don't have a strong squad, whether that be injuries, change in style, all the chaos that we've discussed in recent years, it means that there's such a heavy reliance on Igaman when he comes into the team. Dessers right throughout to play every single game when he's probably not a striker suited to every single game. Nsiala to come in and be a ready-made centre-back right away. Chefty to play every single minute of every single game in his first season. Because there's this lack of balance in the squad, and Černy's maybe the same because he's just played so much football. If Dessers was someone who only played in these games where there's space in behind, I mean, he terrorised that defence last night, didn't he? Yeah. And he looked so confident. I think he's got the mentality to play for Rangers because he keeps bouncing back. He doesn't suit games at home when it's a low block and it's about prize and open defences. But when you've got a space to run into and behind, he's a completely different player. So I just think sometimes, you know what I'm saying, Derek, that if you had normal squad rotation, you look at what Celtic have had with Kyogo and Ida and Maeda and play different games, maybe they suit different occasions. Dessers probably isn't a striker who suits every single occasion, and as a result, maybe goes down in all our estimations because he has those games where he's completely anonymous. But last night, I mean, you were there. He just he could have had a hat trick, and the pass that he played for that second goal reminded me of that PSV pass to Matondo. We've not seen that as much in his game as of late, but perhaps that's because he's been so isolated. When actually you play players around him, you allow Cherney to play behind him. And if you look at the goal, let me just show this quickly, Derek. But you see, if you look at the build-up to the Cherney's first goal, the second goal, the big difference here for me is if you can just take away that S1 Jobs banner, just momentarily to our sponsors, just to show the tactics. But if Cherney's out where Kostic is, and if he's situated out in the right wing instead of in this narrow position, I think Dessers isn't good at dropping in here. That's not his game. He wants to stay high and stay on the shoulder. And by putting, whether it be Cherney or another player close to him, you allow him to play his natural game, stretch the defence, make that run in behind, and play a pass that, no one else sees. But the big difference for me here, Derek, is that if Cherney's where Kostic is, and Dessers has to drop in and link the game, I don't think that works. So I think you've got to give Ferguson and his coaching staff credit because they created a tactical template last night that got the best out of those two players who decided the game.
Yeah, they most definitely did. What do you make of the tactical change from Barry? I mean, afterwards in the press conference, he was asked how big a gamble was it to change the shape. He says it was a gamble, but it was a gamble I was prepared to take. As I said yesterday, I've watched Fenerbahce 9 or 10 times. I just thought I had to change the shape. I thought about it on Sunday, debated with my coaching staff. They weren't too sure, but I had my way. I thought we could get a result, and then we obviously started to get work on that on Tuesday. So what did you make of that, Josh, of the change of shape? Because it certainly caught many by surprise. Is that perhaps a blueprint for going forward, or is this just a sort of one-off, do you reckon?
Well, I think they only had like 35% of the ball. And before the game, we were kind of saying, I'm not sure about going to a back five. And the reason was, you think, what's worked well in Europe is maybe not inviting too much pressure. And it really was. It was like a 5-4-1. Diomande, who I thought had a great game.
Oh, brilliant.
Both he and Barron were freed up. He and Raskin were freed up a little bit by Barron being there. I think Barron next to Cherney helped because you gave a bit more legs behind Cherney. And that was Barron's first game back in a while. The most important thing was actually Leon Balogun coming on helped Rangers and Proper took a horrible injury. But he won all of his aerial duels, Leon Balogun. And that was the big threat that Fenerbahce had, the way they attacked the box, the way they load the box. They were playing with like 6 men on the last line from like 30 minutes in. So the early goal helped Rangers' approach, because if they go 1-0 down and they don't have that early goal, maybe it's harder to get up the pitch, and Fenerbahce can then set off a little bit. Because they got that early goal, obviously it invited space for them to play into. And having those three centre-backs, especially Suter and Balogun, because the crosses were normally coming from Kostic on the left and Tadic and then St. Maximum, that really helped having Balogun and Suter at the back post. And there wasn't really, I mean, Butland had a couple of moments where he looked shaky, also made a couple of big saves. And as I say, I think Sterling coming on, I'd hope he plays in that right wing back spot next week, Derek, because again, he gives you that power to get up and down the pitch. I think he helped swing the game because he got the better of St. Maximum in a way that Ridvan wasn't in those maybe 15, 20 minutes that he was up against them. So you've got to give Barry Ferguson credit because he has put his own stamp on it and it's worked. The question is next week what you do. Because do you go after them and try and get the first goal? Do you try and give the ball to Fenerbahce again? What I would say is that Mourinho's team, he, in his post-match press conference, he rightly said, look, it's not over. Don't celebrate too much, presumably to the Rangers bench. You can forgive them for getting excited about that game. But his teams aren't normally at their best when they have a lot of the ball. So maybe this suits Rangers a little bit more. I don't know. But defending crosses is what they had to do well, and Suter and Balogun, yeah, were both pretty imperious in that regard on the night.
Yeah, I was one Sterling team on at half-time, I've got to admit. But Fenerbahce were having a bit of joy down Rangers' right-hand side with Ridvan there. So, Sterling came on and just put paid to Maxim's efforts down that flank. I thought he was superb when he came on. There's a few points coming in. Just on the offsides, we touched on it. There were marginal, Joshua. The first one that was ruled offside, I mean, Bobby raises the point here. He says that offside should be your feet. I mean, at what point are we? Surely the attacker it should benefit the attacker when the lines are so marginal like that. I mean, I mean, what the drill on his shoulder. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is what Arsene Wenger's trying to work against, is it not? He's got this FIFA law. Someone can tell me exactly. I'm not sure, but there's I believe some work in the background to try and give the attacker the advantage. And obviously, the question would then be, well, what's the cutoff? And then do you make it more complex if you give some sort of advantage to the attacker? But what I guess the response to those goals being offside last night would be that the offside law was not introduced to stop goals like that. Now, football is advanced, and you need to, I think, move with technology as well, because they help get other decisions that are clear and obvious. They help get them corrected. But both of those goals, as you say, in particular, was it the first one that was? I think it was the first one was the worst. The second one, I think you saw quite quickly.
His foot was off. Yeah, his foot perhaps. Yeah,
you thought he'd moved. Yeah, you thought he'd moved back, but that's Dessers. He kind of plays on the shoulder, and his movement is probably his biggest weapon. But if Rangers had went 3-1 up, then that'll maybe be the one regret, that could it have been even more. And
could realistically have been 5-1 last night. And that wouldn't have flattered Rangers, I don't think.
Yeah. And listen, Butland makes a couple, especially at the end, he makes a save. I can't remember who it was from, but it's to stop the game going 3-2. Yeah. And it was a big save. And if the game goes 3-2, then the tone at Ibrox next week is probably slightly different. Rangers have a 2-goal advantage, as they did when they took Dortmund back to Ibrox a few years ago. And so it was good to see Giovanni Van Bronckhorst in the...
Yes,
I know you wouldn't have seen it, but he was looking well.
I seen a clip of him last. Yeah, I seen a clip of him last night. Joshua talking about his time. Obviously, still gutted at how it unfolded at Ibrox. I think he will still be welcome if he ever returns to Ibrox. I think everyone was thankful of the job that he did at the time. I think the time was right to move on, perhaps. But he provided us with some of the best moments following Rangers in Europe. So. It was good to see him last night in the studio. Yeah,
it was. Yeah, a gentleman. So I can't remember what point I was making, but the two goal lead, taking that back to Ibrox. So it'll be interesting to see how they play it. Rangers obviously don't have a game this weekend. They have two big games then, because they play Celtic on the Sunday after Fenerbahce. The squad looks in a better place. I still maintain that I think between now and the end of the season, maybe after these two games, depending on what happens in Europe, you need to be playing young players in domestic competition. I would like to see players like Rafael Fernandez and Clinton Ciala playing the league. I think there's an opportunity to do that, but you can understand last night getting the likes of Suter and Balogun and worked really well, because Balogun gives you much more in the air than Proper does. And Ferguson said pre-match he wanted to start Balogun. Obviously, the way Proper went off, that just looked like the most horrific. I don't know if you saw it back, but I can imagine at the stadium, you were genuinely worried for him for a minute because of the force that Butland. Yeah. Butland seemed fine, remarkably, having.
Interesting. Yeah. Barry was asked about that after the game. He says, in terms of Robin, I think he got knocked out for a minute or two. The big man's up a lot, so he should be okay, but you've got to be wary of that. There's a bit of concussion. So we'll see how he is in the next couple of days in terms of things getting thrown. It's people getting a bit frustrated, but I have no issue with that. That was on at one point, someone asked him, seemed to hand something to the fourth official, things raining down on him. But I thought Balogun was immense when he came on. We've discussed at length on various videos about the need for someone to be aerially dominant and just to head anything that comes their way away. And Leon did that last night. So, fantastic performance by him. and Suter as well coming back in. I thought he was terrific. You mentioned Conor Barron, Joshua. I think a special word for him coming in from the cold and putting in a performance like that in the middle of the park. The young lad can take a lot of heart from that.
He can, because he's not played since Man United away.
Yes.
Again, this is a game that probably suits him. There's a lot of space to cover. He's got a really good engine, prefers playing on that right-hand side, and he gave Raskin and Diamande in particular the energy or the freedom to run forward and do a little bit more with the ball. And Raskin obviously has that shot that should have, if Dessers isn't offside, should have kind of created a goal on the night. So I thought that midfield three were all excellent. We've not really seen Rangers play midfield three, and I don't think they need it domestically. But
Chris
is that potentially...
Yeah, Chris called it yesterday. Sorry, in his predicted teams, he had Barron, Diamande, and Raskin in there. So
love that for him.
Play to him.
Love that for him. That's the first time Chris has ever called a team right.
Well, he got the midfield right. I don't know if they got anything else right enough. But,
I definitely didn't. So who am I to slag him? But maybe that, if Rangers are able to get through, and it is because you look at the quality they still have, and the manager that they're up against, he knows how to manage European games, and the mind games going into the next tie will be interesting. But if Rangers are to get through, is that a template they should use going forward? Probably, maybe, with a bit more security at the back. Especially, I think if you can get Sterling playing at right wing back, who can carry the ball more effectively than Ridvan, who's obviously got a greater physical capacity and is a stronger 1v1 defender. I think that is a team that actually doesn't have too many square pegs and round holes. If you've got Diamande slightly higher than Raskin and Barron and Cherney playing off of Dessers too.
Yep. Just on approaching the game next, we're going to get a Jose Mourinho masterclass in the press conferences. The mind games will have begun. I think they already started after the game last night. He was in good form. Jose, I did enjoy him pretending he was falling asleep from one of the questions posed to him. A note to that Turkish journalist and any journalist out there, if your question goes over 10 seconds, the question's dead. So make sure you don't go on and on and on as that lad did last night, and Josie was in no state to answer it. I thought it was funny that he invited him out for lunch sometime during the week to go through his tactical mistakes that he made last night. But we're going to get the full Jose Mourinho playbook, I think, heading into the game. In terms of that game, listen, I'd just be going out and trying to blow Fenerbahce away in the first half and getting the tie won. That's the way I would be doing it. I think they're gettable. And if Rangers could get an early goal, then tie's over for me. So I would like Rangers to go out and not... So, with the Ibrox crowd behind you, I know... there's going to be an expectancy for the fans pitching up at Ibrox next week. You just hope it's another one of those performances that we've witnessed so many times in Europe. So, I fancy Rangers to go and finish the job next week, but it is by no means over. Of course, it is only half-time. There is still a lot of work to be done. Let's get to a few of the points coming in, because there is loads, as you can imagine. Just on the result itself, Blair says, best away day since Dortmund. Hard to argue with that, Joshua. Is there any ones that sort of come close?
Well, Chris and I obviously kind of rotate who goes to these away games, and he's had all the big wins, and I have had
Do you need to stay on then?
Yeah, I've had the draw in Olympiacos and the Malmo game. Can't think what else this season. But yeah, I think Chris was in Nice too. So I know you used to be a bad luck charm away in Europe, but no more. They are bygone days. Yeah,
my record is absolutely sensational now.
I didn't realize you were wearing it. Was it a Besiktas hat you were donning? Right, okay. I wondered what that was, and I only clocked it late on. So that's
we went a tour around their ground earlier on in the day. Our hotel's only a short walk away, so myself and many other Rangers fans were down doing the tour at the museum, and I bought a few things in the club store, and it was chilly one last night, so I thought I'd get myself a woolly hat. And thank you to Besiktas for supplying top quality knitwear for my head. So it was most enjoyable. I've seen it's angered a fair few supporters of a certain team. So there you go. But you can't please them all, as you say. But
here, Dave, let me. It's never stopped you before. Let me put it to you. What percentage of the ball do you think Rangers had last night?
Did you say, was it something like 35% or something? 30%?
37%. And the expected goals was Fenerbahce just shaded it. 1.69 to 1.61. All that to say that who's going to dominate the ball next week? Do Fenerbahce want to dominate it? Will Rangers try and sit off? Do they, if they go for it early on and try and get that goal, but then Fenerbahce get the first goal, will that make then sitting off more difficult? It's going to be a difficult one for Barry Ferguson and his team to predict. They're in a strong position. They'd have been in a stronger position if they had the away goals rule, but they're in a strong position. But it definitely worked for them. I don't know if that's the lowest percentage of the ball Rangers have had in Europe this season, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's certainly up there.
What was Man United?
I'll check. You get to a couple of comments now.
Right, I'll crack on with some comments. I'll touch on this because a lot of people. Well, first of all, Hugh says that third goal reminded me of the Bobby Russell winner against Eindhoven in 1978. That was another amazing result. I think that was the first time PSV had lost a European match at home. What a result that was from Rangers. Few people asking what was the fan experience like heading to the game. Neil with the point says, how was the bus and being in the stadium for hours, Derek? Staying behind for just over about an hour, maybe an hour and a half inside the stadium after the final whistle, but it wasn't ideal. It's a whole lot better when the team wins, right enough. So it wasn't that much angst, but I've got to say the Rangers fans showed great restraint, as they always do. The matches I've been away in the away end, Malmo and Nice. Got to say that the police presence was greater than those two fixtures. The Nice police were just out of order, no two ways about it. Overzealous, heavy-handed, no need for it. There was loads of police there last night, armed with batons and riot shields, helmets, you name it. But they were all in good humour. The fans were having a laugh with them. There was no animosity or anything like that. It was well policed, and no complaints with it whatsoever. The bus end took absolutely ages. You don't realise how vast Istanbul is. We were under a police escort to get all the buses to the ground, and they did do so, and then were funneled into the stadium. I posted a picture you may have seen over on Twitter, where they sort of filed you into these metal cages, which isn't ideal if you're someone of the big variety in terms of waistline. But we funneled through there and then up into the away end. I touched on at the top of the show. Very little catering on offer, just two windows for 2,500 fans there or thereabouts. You can imagine the queues. The toilets were ghastly, to say the least. I almost spewed when I walked in there, but they did a job. And the fans were terrific last night. It was a real pleasure to be in amongst it all. As Jim, as I touched on earlier, saying I'm coming at a bit of a good omen now. My record is...
You are.
If Bruno Fernandes doesn't score that goal in stoppage time against Rangers in that game, then I think if my unbeaten record stretches all the way back to Betis, I think. So long may it continue. And I know there's people already looking at booking hotels in Rome and Bilbao, which I would say just hang fire at the moment. Make sure it's free cancellation, I would say. But for supporters that are dreaming again, let's be honest, Joshua, this is Rangers' season now. And everything is on this game. If they can progress past Fenerbahce, of course, the challenge is such that they'll take on Roma or Bilbao. Roma won by 2-1. They scored a stoppage time winner last night, but I think it's all to play for there in the second leg of that tie. But Rangers, for me, last night, that was the statement result in Europe. I know Don Hutchinson said likewise in the studio on TNT as well. So that's it. That's the one that I think people are going to sit up and take notice of.
Yeah, it is. I've not been to Bilbao, but I've been to Rome, and I loved Rome. So I hope I would. Have you been to Rome?
I have been. I went to a Roma Napoli game. See, before Rangers played Napoli.
Oh yeah.
I went to that game, and it was great atmosphere. It was really good. So I think of the two teams, who would you? I think Bilbao would be more difficult than Roma. They're two. Listen, let's be honest. Both of them would be favourites against Rangers if they can progress. But two tasty ties, Joshua. It's ties that you would excite the fan base.
Yeah, and it should be. Rangers at points this season have been such a chore to watch, haven't they? Like you think of some of those afternoons at Ibrox people have sat through, and people deserve a night like last night to just enjoy it and enjoy the performance. Still, yes, it is halftime. I hate that cliche in two-legged.
I know.
I've just said it, but it is. They've got what a chance though to go in. The thing is, I think the difference compared to a few years ago, Derek, is that the road to Seville, obviously, that once you got past Dortmund and you had Braga and Red Star, you thought, right, they are Red Star and Braga, sorry, two winnable ties. Roma would be really difficult, but also, again, you look at the fact that Rangers have played top teams already in this competition. Man United, Tottenham. To answer your question, it's 34% of the ball against Man United, so a little bit less than last night, but similar numbers. They've nothing to fear overall, and the fact that they are not in the Scottish Cup this weekend, while they would like to be, maybe just gives them a little bit more time to be as prepared as possible and spend a bit more time on the training pitch than would otherwise be the case. There's different approaches in Europe, and I think if you think back to Van Bronckhorst, he had that famous kind of plan A, B, C. We're going to start with a back four and we'll go to a back five if this happens, and the players were so well versed in it. Clement was a little bit more, this is what we're going to do, and to be fair to him, it worked. I think Ferguson will be more of trying to tweak and tinker with things and have a few different possibilities depending on how the game goes, and that time will probably be beneficial to him if that is the case.
Yeah, let's get a few points before we wrap up. What's this? I've seen you were on with Johnny last night, weren't you, Joshua? Some guys donated to the channel, so thank you to Alex. It says, is Josh now looking for an opportunity to use word invincible? How are you pronouncing that?
I can't remember. Johnny said it last night.
I'm sure Johnny said it. Yeah,
we both got right. I always say to Johnny that he teaches me new words, but sometimes I think he says words that don't exist. Like when you're on a phone call with him. And he just says them.
Yes.
So I just started to pull. But that I believe is a word, and I've been told off for my poor vocabulary on various social platforms since. I will be looking for that. We're going to have a piece later on the website today talking through what is the possibility of Rangers actually keeping Václav Černý at the club. He's got 24 goals and assists by March 6th, Derek, which I can't remember the last Rangers wide player to hit those type of numbers. You're looking at
sensational,
almost a guaranteed 30 goals and assists, and that's from someone who has been consistent with a lot of inconsistency around him.
Yeah,
he's 27 years old. He's still got 2 years in his contract. There's no shortage of suitors. That's the difficulty with a lone player, as was the case with Tillman and with Sima. The better they play, the more difficult they are to keep. But those numbers are seriously impressive, and Dessers too. I think it's 23 goals for the season. He must be near 30 goal contributions too. So yeah, they both.
Well, this point from David Joshua from it says how much is Dessers worth now? Not just league goals. He's done great to come back. We spoke about his mentality before. He's banging form, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he's still got 2 years in his contract this summer. 29, just about to turn 30.
I don't care about his age. If he can do the business, then I want him to stick around.
I guess that's the point, isn't it? It's like if you had Danilo fully fit this season, I think those three striking options would have worked well, because Danilo can play the games against teams at home who sit in because he can link play. Eggman, we all know his quality. He's had a quieter few weeks. He also carried Rangers. He also carried Rangers and for quite a few weeks. So I don't think there's too much harm there, although I would like to see him continue to play, because you need to keep boosting his value. But how much is he worth at the moment? I don't know. He certainly there is that argument of, would you be able to replace him for the money that you got in for him? I don't know what his overall goal per game ratio is since he came to Rangers, but I'll look at that today, because it must be pretty good over the course. And he is just someone. People will see this in interviews with him, but he is a genuinely very, very nice guy who has had a lot of flack and sometimes fair criticism. That's what being a footballer entails. But he's spoken before about working with a sports psychologist and the benefit that's had on him. I did a piece last year where I spoke to people, youth coaches, and he's got quite a story of being dropped and dropped from kind of elite academies at the age of 16, didn't think he was going to make it. So this is kind of the story of Desser's entire football career, having to prove people wrong, normally with a smile on his face. So you've got to give him a lot of credit, because last night he was... what did Mourinho say? He said Desser's a good player, but last night he looked like the best player in the world.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. He says, today Desser's looked like the best player in the world. So you better believe it, Josie. And if you can continue in that rich vein next Thursday, then that would be absolutely fantastic. You get a great reception from the fan base as well, Cyril Dessers. Some of the songs that tickled me as well. You're Not Special Anymore was a good chant from the Rangers fan base towards Mourinho, and I did enjoy them singing Souness, which went down well, as you can imagine, with the home supporters. A good night had by all. I like this. Neil with the point says, just watching Barry on the sidelines driving the players on is inspiring. Yeah, he was kicking every ball on there. I did notice that myself, which, I mean, the players were constantly looking over at and getting little bits of information. So, listen, he'll be proud as punch, Barry Ferguson, today after that, a masterclass against the special one. And if he can complete the job next week, then it's a real feather in the cap for Barry and the coaching staff at Rangers. I wanted to wrap up with this, of course. Tragic news the other night ahead of the game passing of the Rangers supporter Christopher Potter, who was killed in a road traffic accident. Now, Barry was asked about that in the post-match press conference. He says, we're devastated. Our thoughts go with the man's family and friends. It's never nice to hear things like that. That's all I really know. I get informed about it at lunch. So, as I say, our thoughts from the whole of Rangers Football Club go to his family and friends. And I know there's a crowdfunder that's been launched. I just noticed there it's raised over £90,000 to get Christopher back to his family and cover funeral costs as well. So great effort from not just the Rangers fan base. I've noticed many others from all walks of life, different parts of football as well, have contributed to that. So hats off to you. It really is devastating news to lose one of our own as supporters. So you'll be very sadly missed indeed. Right, we'll wrap up there. Big thank you to Joshua for coming on, and thank you to you all for tuning in to the show. It's greatly appreciated. As Joshua touched on, no weekend game. Joshua, what are we going to do?
Relax. No, there'll be loads of content. We've got an interview with Cole McKinnon about really interesting stuff about Gerrard, Clement, the B team, now out on loan, making that jump to the Rangers first team. We've got Stevie Clifford's column. We've got loads more player reaction from the games. Got content from last night's game to come today on the website. So we just would loads of content to come, and would also just completely echo everything you've just said about that really tragic news. And just would like to echo that, and think it's fantastic that so much has been raised to.
Interestingly, there was a minute's applause in the 40th minute because it was 40 last night in the away end. Hats off to each and every one of the Rangers fans for that. I think the Rangers scored just shortly after that as well. So I'd imagine Christopher would have been looking down on his beloved Rangers. Right, thank you to you all as ever, and enjoy your weekend, whatever you are up to, and we'll speak to you again on Monday. Bye for now.